Welcome to Distracted, the podcast with Angela Lockwood, the place where you will find practical brain-boosting strategies, expert insights, and real-life stories to help busy brains thrive in the age of distraction. Let's go. Welcome to Distracted. I'm Angela Lockwood. Thanks so much for joining me today. We have a really fantastic conversation today with somebody who is a real leader and an expert in the field. Dr. Nick Fuller joins us today, and he's the Clinical Trials Director of the Department of Endocrinology at the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. That title alone should sort of cue you into what we're going to be speaking about is evidence-based, it's scientifically backed, and it's also really applicable to current times. And what we're going to be talking about today is very much looking at health and wellness around the family unit, but also how, as busy working parents, we can also set up really healthy habits of our own so that we could be those really positive role models for our kids. So, Dr. Nick Fuller, welcome to Distracted.
Thank you very much for having me on, Angela. I look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Nick. So do you mind if I call you Nick?
Please do.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think anyone that comes on Distracted is too precious about their titles. So look, I want to say thanks so much because I've obviously done so much research around your background and your messaging. And I think that it's going to be really important information that we're going to chat about today because parents often feel overwhelmed by a lot of the noise that's out there around how do we create these healthy habits. And I'm hoping through our conversation today that we'll be able to cut through some of that noise and just make it really simple for parents.
Definitely. It is a confusing world, and one of the biggest challenges is raising kids in the modern day environment.
Yeah. And what I love, and I didn't mention this when I introduced you, but you are an author, a multiple best-selling author around the interval weight loss programs. You are the founder of the interval weight loss program. But what I sort of, when I was reading and I thought, I wonder if people get turned away a little bit about the weight loss term. Can you explain sort of your stance on the weight loss versus the healthy angle?
Absolutely. So I guess to put it into perspective, and as you alluded to, my day-to-day job is at the University of Sydney and Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, where we actually conduct Australia's largest weight management service, where we are trialling and testing different products and treatments to help people regain control of their health and weight, because unfortunately most of us are struggling in the modern day environment. We're sort of dieted ourselves into a problem, and our weight is only going up and up over time, and with that comes a range of different metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that's my day-to-day job. We're running clinical research programs, everything from first-line therapy being lifestyle intervention, educating the general population on what we should be doing to regain control of health and weight, steer them away from diets, because our research clearly shows that unfortunately that's only going to speed up the weight problem that you have. And what I mean by that is your body is going to shut down after a couple of kilos of weight loss. It's holding onto its fat stores, and then it's going to take you back to your start point at some point in time, whether it's a few months down the track or a few years down the track. And it's the very reason why diets don't work. So I'm particularly passionate about translating our evidence-based care from our clinical work in a hospital and university setting to the general population, so we can stop them dieting and hopefully break that yo-yo dieting cycle. Now, what I'm referring to here is particularly adults, helping adults. And another line of our work relates to intervening at the family level. Okay, because what we want to do is set up the next generation so that they don't have this same lifelong struggle with health and weight. And then that comes down to forming healthy habits in the four walls of our own home, particularly around diet, exercise, and sleep health, so that we can look forward to mealtime, so that exercise becomes part of our day-to-day life, and so that we are getting good sleep health by having a healthy relationship with devices, which are unfortunately one of the contributing factors as to why we're struggling to get good sleep. So there's sort of two aspects of my work. Coming back to your question, there is interval weight loss, which is an evidence-based translational program for helping adults regain control of health and weight. Nothing to do with intermittent fasting, despite the interval title. This is actually getting a person to lose weight in small increments every second month to prevent the body's usual response to weight loss, to prevent those physiological responses taking place, the metabolism lowering, the appetite hormones changing, the adrenal glands pumping out more cortisol, the thyroid gland being suppressed. We want to switch all of that off so we can actually get long-term results with our weight, because typically we can lose 5, 10, 20 kilos pretty easy, but then we stack that weight back on just as quick, because remember, our body's going into shutdown mode. It's protecting its fat stores, its set point. It doesn't know any better. And this is what we're up against in terms of our body's biology. The second part of my work comes down to intervening at the family level to ensure we form healthy habits from day one. Even if you've got older kids, reversing some of those negative, unhealthy behaviours and getting it right from here on in, so that, again, they don't then have that lifelong struggle. They don't get stuck in this yo-yo dieting cycle, because once you're in that cycle, it's very hard to break.
Mm. Well, we're going to attack this and our conversation within those two streams if we can, because you've just so clearly made it very easy for us to have this conversation. But what I'd love to do first is start at the second point with our kids. Now, when I was younger, I was a top athlete. So as a teenager, I played hockey, field hockey my whole life. And I can remember I was playing in the New South Wales hockey team, and it was a trial. So I'd already been in it. It was a trial with 5 selectors. And I was never one of those, and I'm gonna use the word very loosely, skinny, quick little things. I was the fullback who was strong, that could last the whole game. And I can remember going through the trial process, and I was playing really well. I was so happy. I'd put so much effort into it. And it got to the selection process, and one of the selectors came up to me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, 4 of us said you are in. You are 100% in. One of them said you're too fat." And even me sharing this story with you, I can feel it. It's obviously the fact that I've still speak about it shows that that question, someone questioning the effort and how I looked and all that as a kid has had an impact on me throughout my whole life around my body image, and I'm very well aware of it. My question to you around that is, how do we find as adults the balance between educating our kids around what's healthy? I was an elite athlete. I was in that time, when we had the skin calipers, and, that was a determinant of how fit you were. Well, for someone like me that had a little bit more body fat, skin calipers was like stress me out. But what I can remember is how awful that experience was, and how much as a kid I was questioning myself. So back to the question around, how do we as adults find the balance between educating our kids around what is healthy, and keeping healthy weight and keeping all of our body in tune with giving them those body image issues?
Yeah, this is a really important point you raise. And I guess the take-home message, with 2 points I want to raise here to answer your question, is that we need to focus on health, not weight. We need to take the conversation away from weight. Even with adults, we can be healthy at any size as long as we're following the principles of a healthy lifestyle. Eating balanced diet, eating big to small throughout the day, getting lots of exercise, and a good relationship with devices so we can, have good quality sleep. When it comes to our kids, this is particularly relevant. We need to be role modeling healthy behaviors. We do not need to be talking about weight or dieting in the family home, because unfortunately that is going to rub off on them, and they're getting stuck in this dieting or yo-yo dieting cycle at an earlier age. The dieting industry are hooking them in, and compounded with that is we as parents and adults have our own struggle with weight, and we're often talking about dieting and body weight. So all that's doing is creating unhealthy associations with food and weight. And the second point is that we all are different shapes and different sizes. We don't fall in this perfect continuum of a healthy body weight. So we need to throw out the BMI, and we need to look at health as a holistic picture. We need to be looking at waist circumference. We need to look at weight over time, okay? Because often you will have a child that might fall into, and I'm using inverted commas here, overweight or an obesity weight range, but it doesn't mean anything, because then if you get them continuing to follow healthy behaviours, they then grow into what is their optimum body weight throughout their life. Now, that's under the provision that, you are actually, offering nature's treats and they're not filling up on processed and fast foods as a regular daily occurrence. But we do need to shift away from weight, particularly when it comes to children, adolescents. It's a time of great importance. Basically their brain is growing and developing so much, and we are shaping their lifelong decisions when it comes to food. We need to get it right, and it starts with us as parents. So set the example by not talking about body weight and dieting in the family household, and make meal times fun and enjoyable by getting your children involved in food.
I absolutely love this, Nick, because there's so many things that parents really beat themselves up about. And what we don't need to be doing is beating ourselves up in front of our kids either. Is about having that dialogue. And I'm very well aware around kids being really positive about my health. And what's really interesting, I think, is that dialogue that adults take through their lives from those early childhood experiences, and we sort of almost look for evidence, don't we, to support, that those comments or those experiences as kids. What I loved that you spoke about was the healthy habits. So for young kids, I guess one of the things, we'll get to the habits in a minute, but how in the world can they have a healthy dialogue about themselves when they are fronted with social media constantly? How do they have this image of health when there's so many images against health online?
Yeah, and this is, technology is not going anywhere.
No.
We have to embrace it, but we need to educate our children that what they see online, pinched in waistlines, Photoshop, celebrities, are not real life. And we don't need to be, aspiring to look like these images we see online. So we've got to encourage them to follow people that make them happy and cheerful, and that they look up to in a positive framework when it comes to healthy habits. Anyone that's encouraging or promoting dieting and restriction around certain foods, or telling you to stay away from food groups, or certain foods make you fat, it's something we need to block out. We need to encourage our children to move away from, because a lot of that information is misinformation. And recent data shows that 95% of the information, medical information, that we get from social media is wrong.
What is it? 100%? 95% of statistics are incorrect.
Fewer than 5% of people are actually disseminating evidence-based information. So it's crazy. Yeah. And this is what we're largely going to for our health information. We really need to, I guess, drum that in, but in a positive way. And as we talk about, technology is not going anywhere. It's intertwined in our life, but we do need to encourage them or educate them around, I guess, that focus on health, not weight. Okay. And the fact that not all of us are, one size fits all. We all fall on get different spectrum in terms of weight range. So, again, coming back to that health, not weight, allowing them to grow into a healthy body weight by getting them to focus on healthy behaviours, and you role modelling them in the four walls of your own home.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into, let's talk about what those healthy behaviours are, because this is a podcast called Distraction, and what I know, and you've already touched on this, is that there is so much information out there, and almost so much noise out there too, that sometimes healthy messages are almost screaming at us. How do we cut through that noise as adults? So not even if you've got children, but just as adults, how do we cut through that noise and work out what are those healthy habits that will work for our family?
Yes, so the first thing is to follow evidence-based care. Listen to healthcare professionals that actually know what they're talking about. And what I mean by that is those that have studied, in this instance, the science of overweight, obesity, and metabolic disease. Because our body, despite it being beautiful, it is very complicated. And it does all it can, unfortunately, to work against us when it comes to weight management. The simplest way of describing that is our set point. This is a weight that we remember being at for a long period of time in our adult years, particularly over the age of 20 years plus. It's that weight you'll remember bouncing back to after every bout of starvation or dieting. So you might be at 100, you lose 10, but your body then climbs back to that 100, but it puts on the plus GST. So you end up at the 101, 102 kilos because your body gets used to preparing for that next bout of starvation. It learns to actually add on a bit of extra fat. So it's better likelihood of surviving that next starvation that comes around. So all you're doing there is driving up your set point over time. That's why dieting is not the answer. All we've been doing is talking about different diets for the last 5 to 6 decades. They're just a derivative, I guess, of their predecessor. 1 minute it's low carb, the next it's high fat, next it's high protein, then it's cut out certain foods. It is all nonsense. It's far simpler than that. And this is why, we need to be listening to the science and following evidence-based care. So I have translated a lot of this into books, as you alluded to, the most recent being Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids. There are 6 healthy habits. We talked about health, not weight. That's particularly relevant because we do see parents going for their regular checkups with their child to the family healthcare nurse, GPs, and unfortunately, those healthcare professionals are looking at weight as a one-off time point, and they're saying, your child's in an overweight range, you need to do something about it. You need to start restricting their food intake. This is wrong advice. We should never, ever put our child on a diet or restrict their food intake. They're extremely good at regulating their calorie intake across the course of the day. Some meals, they'll eat huge volumes of food, and the next, they'll push back and probably have what looks like the size of a couple of peas. Don't be concerned. What we're looking at is the course or the intake over the course of a day, and particularly over the course of a week. Now, what we want to be doing there is looking at weight, remember, as a continuum over time and monitoring the trend over time. So 1 minute they might fall into this overweight or obesity weight range, but then they might jump back down into a 50th percentile healthy weight range. So we're continuing looking at that weight and what it's doing over time. If it persists in the overweight or obesity percentiles, what we then do is reevaluate the healthy habits in the family home. We look at what's been put on the plate, what the children are actually filling up on. Are they getting a lot of their calories from the processed and packaged foods? Because we as parents are very time poor in the modern day environment. We know that they're going to eat those foods, but that often means when it comes to mealtime, they've had enough calories throughout the day. They've filled up on those low fiber, low nutrition foods, and they then say, I don't want that food. It's yuck. I'm not going to eat it. And we give in. We often give them more of that white beige food diet or safe foods that they feel comfortable around. So that's the first thing around health, not weight. There's 6 of them. Remember, the second one is about retraining their brain back to nature's treats. Now, if you have a young child, it's particularly easy because there's so much growth and development going on in their brain, and we can shape their lifelong food preferences. So we've got to give them lots of those foods that are naturally high in sugar, naturally high in fat. Okay, the fruits, the berries, the papaya, the nuts and the seeds, the avocado, the olive oils. All of those foods release all those feel-good chemicals, but importantly, give our children the nutrition their body needs. If they fill up on those nature's treats, they're less likely to scream out for the processed and packaged foods that we see on every corner when we go shopping. So
I just love that. I love that term, nature's treats. I've never heard anybody say that because I think we do elevate, don't we? We elevate those ultra processed foods as the treat as the thing that you aspire to. And I also see that around device use. Obviously, in a lot of my work that I do with kids and with parents is the devices elevate the play outside. So what we do is we give them the device as a treat when they've done something. So when they go to play outside, it's just not as exciting as the device. And what I'm hearing you is almost we're doing that with food, is we're making the processed stuff more appealing than the nature's treat, but we need to have the focus on the nature's element rather than the processed. I love that. That just clicked in my head.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. And it's a really good way of looking at it because these foods, believe it or not, our children love them, but we're just not
So do
wiring.
we.
Yeah, we do. We're just not wiring our brain or wiring their food preferences towards nature's treats. Okay, so they release all those feel-good chemicals in the brain. And we do some fascinating experiments in our clinics at the hospital where we sit down children and adults to different meals, and we look at the brain imaging when they're eating these meals. Now, believe it or not, when you have those nature's treats, it releases all those feel-good chemicals, the serotonin, the dopamines release the learning chemical next time you see it. When you have the fruits, the nuts and the seeds, the nature's treats, sure, you're also getting those feel-good chemicals released when you have the processed or fast foods. But guess what? Those foods are low in fiber, low in nutrition. They don't make us feel great afterwards, and they're only adding to the problem being our waistline. So let's get them hooked on nature's treats. If you've got older children, it's still very positive news because you can reshape their food preferences, but it does not happen overnight. This is the only important point to highlight, because if we have older children, we often say, well, my child just doesn't like fruit. I can't get them to have any, of these nature's treats. We can't give in after one or two occasions. We've got to persist with it 10 to 20 times. Continue to do it. And after a couple of months, we start to see this adoption of nature's treats. We start to see them become more widely, adopted in the family home. And you've got to make sure that you saturate that family environment with the nature's treats. So when they're hungry, you're constantly offering them those foods.
So let's talk a little bit just about, when you go out for dinner with kids, my children are 17 and 15 now, so they're a little bit older, but one of my frustrations used to be that when you take the children out for dinner when they were younger, the kids' meals were all disgusting. They were all fried. There was never like a little version of the big adult healthy version. So what we used to do with our kids when we were little, because I wanted them to be able to eat like we do, if we went to Indian or went to Thai food, we would just give them a portion off our plate when they were younger so that they were eating. And I remember people going, my kids would never eat that. And I think, well, I never really gave the kids the option of the chips and chicken nugget, because that I just never understood why you would do that. So obviously no judgment for parents because that's what we're being given. But is there also an element of making those conscious choices when we're out to go, well, just because it's labeled a kid's thing doesn't necessarily mean it's good for them?
100%. Yeah, this is a perfect way of dealing with that challenging situation. It's a time where we're going out, socializing together, and hopefully looking forward to that takeout treat. But getting them to actually, enjoy the meals that you're having as well. And this is the same in the household environment. What we're doing at the moment as parents is we're cooking meals for all of the different children and family members in the one house. It's absurd. We don't have time for that. And we shouldn't be catering for all of these needs. Even if there are food intolerance or food allergies, you can cook one meal for the whole family. And that's so important. So you've got to get your children involved in selecting recipes, giving them simple tasks when you're cooking the recipe, and then actually serving up that meal and sitting around the dinner table together. And as you just alluded to, Andrea, allowing them to select and choose that food that's in front of them, but eat the same food as you. Mm-hmm. It's so important. If they see you eating that meal, over time, again, they begin to adopt and more likely to enjoy that food. But it just doesn't happen overnight, particularly if you've got older children and they've had a diet that's largely been made up of processed white beige foods, the nuggets, the fish fingers, the noodles, etc. So, we've got to wind back the clock. We've got to spend a little bit more time on what is the most important time of the day, being mealtime, and sit around the dinner table together. Because the other fascinating part of that research is that a meal around the dinner table will last 30 to 40 minutes. Obviously, it depends on the age of your children. If you've got young children, it's going to be a bit shorter, but a meal in front of the TV will last anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes. And often that's accompanied by unhealthy food choices as well.
That's actually really fascinating. I think this is a question I get asked a lot from parents. So when I'm doing workshops, often one of the questions is, should we be eating around the dinner table? And what's really interesting, I find, is the fact that they ask that question means they know the answer.
Definitely.
It's very obvious. And I know that sitting around the dinner table, it's been one of those non-negotiables in my family for a very long time. And, ever since the kids were little, we always sat around the dinner table. And I see now as the kids are older and coming and going, it's almost become a sacred space for us now that even though, we've got kids working and we've got kids, here, there, and everywhere at training, when we do come together, it's almost like the chaos of the week just slows down. So it's often not just about the food for us, for our family, it's also about the presence and being there and having conversations that you would not have if you're watching TV.
100%. That communication element can't be, overestimated. It's so important, sitting around, allowing for the appetite signals to be sent from your stomach to your brain to actually tell you you're full as well. So it's about slowing down and actually watching our children, particularly if you've got young children. They eat incredibly slow. There's so much that we can learn from that because, again, in this modern day environment, it's all about rush, 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 rush. And I get that, often one parent might be still at work while the other's rushing around picking up the kids. But there's still times throughout the week where you can sit down together at that dinner table. And it needs to be that uniting of the whole family. And breakfast is often a time when you can do it. But weekends is another time when you do have a bit more time. You can spend more time on food creation in the kitchen and particularly sitting around that dinner table together. And then coming back to your point about, I guess, fussy eating and how we've sort of allowed our children to become fussy eaters. Unfortunately, that has been the case. Our research does show that we are narrowing their diets over time because we're giving into their food demands. We're spending time in the kitchen cooking these delicious meals. They're pushing back on them due to a variety of reasons. One might be because they've been getting, a lot of calories from processed and packaged foods, low nutrition, low in fiber. Secondly, we're presenting foods in a way that, from an evolutionary point of view, they're probably going to push back on them. We learnt to seek out foods that are naturally sweet, naturally high in fat. We learnt to leave the bitter tasting vegetables in the environment because they're potentially toxic and harmful to our health. So you fast forward tens of thousands of years, the same, barriers are what we're up against. Okay. So this is why children will push back on a lot of those vegetables, particularly if you just leave them on the plate in their sort of, natural raw form. You've got to get them involved, cook family favorites like pies and curries and casseroles, get all of those flavors blending together, bring out all of the natural sugars from the vegetables, and they will embrace it. They will get down to those meals. They're not going to necessarily say yes the first time or the second time or the third time, but over time they will, especially if they see you eating that meal. Also, if they've contributed to the meal. And lastly, if you're not giving into their food demands, because often they'll say no, and then we get out the chicken nuggets, the noodles, the fish fingers, and we give them those safe white beige foods. They feel comfortable around those foods. If they know they're going to get those foods, they're always going to push back on that delicious, nutritious meal that you cooked.
Now, as parents are listening, going, all well and good for you, Nick. This is your professional world. You are a father yourself, so you're speaking, through experience here. But what I love is through your book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, you've also got a website that's feedingfussykids.com. And I think even that term, a lot of parents go, but my kids won't eat this, they won't eat that. They only eat white foods, or they might have a preference for things. So if you are listening to this as parents thinking, well, how in the world do I do this? Go to feedingfussykids.com and have a look at that. Or even, of course, buy yourself a copy of the book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, because you've got recipes in there. And I love that because too often what we do is, particularly if you do a Google search, you've got somebody that's probably taken a recipe from someone else that doesn't, often know what they're talking about, or you've got to scroll through pages and pages and pages of recipes looking for something that you think might be healthy. And I guess this is a plug for you, Nick, because you know what you're talking about. It's science-based, it's evidence-backed. That Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids has those recipes in there. So if any parents are going, I have no idea where to start on this, great strategies, but where in the world, I would strongly recommend that's a good place to start. Now let's move just briefly. I knew I could talk to you forever. To adults. So, what I'd love to do is just what are some quick wins that parents, or even if you're not a parent, if there's two adults in the family, or if you're on your own, what are some quick wins that um, we can have that to create some of those healthier habits? How do we get started?
Okay, so the first thing is that if you are struggling with your weight, trust me, I've been researching this for 2 decades. You're not going to win with diets and food restriction. You have to stop that. And this includes the new fads around keto and intermittent fasting. There's no question you'll get weight loss. We know that. All diets work, and they all produce varying amounts of weight loss. But when I follow you up and when we conduct randomized controlled trials, gold standard research, these people put the weight back on. So the intermittent fasting, the keto, all of these, I guess, current, crazes and fads around dieting are not producing any better results than their predecessors. And that is weight loss followed by weight regain. But remember, you don't just put the weight back on that you lost, you put on the plus GST because your body learns to prepare for the next bout of starvation. So the first thing I really need you to do is block out that noise. Stop following the social media sensations, the big name celebrities that are pushing diets onto their large followings. Often they don't have the credentials to back up what they're saying, and they don't know what they're talking about. Obesity is a science, and our body works in weird and wonderful ways, but unfortunately in this instance, it's working against us. It doesn't know any better. It needs to protect its set point, because when you go back tens of thousands of years, food was not available in every corner of every block. And when it wasn't available during times of deprivation, our body did learn to shut down. Okay, so that's what's happening in the modern day environment when we go and lose weight. Now, the second thing is that if you are trying to lose weight, it is not all doom and gloom. We do know that you can lose weight and keep it off, but it's slow and steady. It's actually losing it in small increments every second month. Okay, so setting yourself a goal of a couple of kilos of weight loss and then actually taking the foot off the accelerator during the second month and maintaining the weight from the month before then going on and losing a couple more kilos, maintenance, etc. So it looks like a step down pyramid approach. And when you allow those maintenance periods every second month, you're allowing your body to reset at its new set point. You don't get those physiological changes taking place. You're not working against your biology, you're working with it. So again, it might seem like a really long and slow game, but it's better to lose 10 to 12 kilos over the course of a year than what it is to lose 10 or 12 kilos over a few months only to put 12 to 14 back on just as quick. So we've got to, again, coming back to your question, refocus and reframe our outlook and focus on long term, not short term, and focus on something other than weight. So you need to set yourself a health goal. So if you're trying to set, I guess, new healthier habits in the family home, and remember there are those 6 key principles around diet, exercise, and sleep that everyone can start following. But you need to set a goal other than weight. And that might be to start feeling, energetic so you can see your kids grow up. It can be something simple like that where it can keep you focused on the long term, because at the moment we're looking for that short term win all the time to get ready for that event that's around the corner, following that quick fad, quick diet to get the quick win. Unfortunately, that's only going to make your problem worse off long term, and you're driving yourself into a worse off position when it comes to your health and your weight. So I guess refocus and your outlook when it comes to rethink how you can regain control of health and weight, interval weight loss, losing small increments of weight every second month. Set yourself a goal that's something other than weight. Focus on health. It's so important. And role model of those 6 healthy habits in the family, 4 walls of your own family home. Because if you can start to do that, monkey see, monkey do, your children start to adopt it. And then everyone feels a lot healthier and happier, particularly around mealtime, which at the moment is a real struggle and a real battle for most parents. And it shouldn't be.
I just love that. It's about not talking about weight or even losing weight. It's not even about how much, you're on the scales. It's about healthy habits and creating environments for kids where they can feel the energy that they should have as a young kid. They should have the energy to get off the lounge and go outside and kick a footy or play basketball or whatever it is. But also, I know for me, Nick, my biggest motivation is I want to be able to do that alongside my kids. I want to be able to go and shoot a basketball with them for 10 minutes without having a heart attack on the basketball court. And I think for any listeners that are listening to this, we've talked about weight, we've talked about body image. But really, if you take a step back from all that, looking at the evidence, looking at the research, cutting through the noise, don't beat yourself up that you're not getting it right. Just go back to basics. And I think as parents, we often beat ourselves up a little bit too much about not getting it right. But I love going to people like Nick. Have a look at his website at feedingfussykids.com and grab yourself a copy of the book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids. I will put the links to everything in the show notes. But also too, the family unit, and I love that you touched on this, Nick, about being a role model. Whether that be that you have kids or you don't have kids, you being a presence, you feeling healthy, feeling alive. We're here for the long haul. We want to age well. No matter what age you're at, we want to age healthily. So I just want to thank you, Nick, for giving us some of those insights, and just hopefully people can reframe what health really looks like. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Angela. And look, don't necessarily try and overhaul everything in one go. Focus on one habit, move on to the next, and over time it just becomes easier and easier.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I could talk, as I said, I could keep talking to you. I have 1,000,001 questions, but maybe there'll be another time and space for that. But thanks so much for your time, and all the best in the work that you're doing as clinical trials director. So well done for that.
Thank you. Keep up the great work, and lovely to chat.
Thanks, Nick. We've been joined today by Dr. Nick Fuller, Clinical Trials Director at the Department of Endocrinology, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. And we've been talking all about how we can, as adults, be really positive role models in the health and well-being of our kids, but also taking the focus on our own health and well-being to have that energy and vibrancy we want, and cut through that noise and just get back to the stuff that really matters. But thanks so much for your time, for joining me, everyone. I'm Angela Lockwood. Thanks for listening to Distracted.